Delete everything. All code, all files, all of it belongs to my company now. The glass walls did nothing to soften the sound. Everyone could hear him. He let that hang there, the way people do when they want witnesses. IT hovered near the door. HR pretended to read an email. The CEO's son leaned back in the chair like he'd already won. I didn't move. Not because I was frozen, because I was counting breaths. My name is Marin Whitaker. I am 39 years old. The sentence ran through my head the way it always did when someone tried to reduce me to a line item. Not a resume moment. A grounding one. I stared at the reflection in the glass, my own face looking calmer than I felt, and nodded once. Delete everything, he repeated. Slower this time. Don't get cute. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for legal. I didn't ask for time. I glanced at the laptop between us and then back at him. Executive authentication is required. Sarbanes-Oxley, manual destruction of compliance modules isn't a contractor-level action. He smiled like I'd just made his afternoon more interesting. So log in and do it. I shook my head. It won't run from my credentials. The smile tightened. He pulled the keyboard closer, cracking his knuckles. Then I'll do it myself. I slid the laptop across the table. Slow enough for everyone to notice. Use your ID. It has to be you. He didn't hesitate. Fingers flew. Password, 2-factor, enter. The screen flickered. A confirmation window bloomed in the center. Clinical and final. He barely skimmed it. Another tap. Executive-initiated destruction of compliance records. The room felt smaller. The air kicked on too late. I closed the laptop. Done. He stood, already reaching for his jacket. Clean up your desk. Security will escort you out. A glance at the time. I'm grabbing lunch. The door clicked shut behind him. Chairs stayed empty. No one spoke. In the final third of this chapter, a quiet note belongs here. This story is a work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It exists to tell what happened, not to pause for explanations. The glass door opened again. The CFO was there, phone still in his hand, screen lit with a missed call. He didn't sit. He didn't look at me first. His eyes stayed on the laptop. What did he just sign without reading the CFO didn't close the door? He left it cracked. A choice that felt deliberate, like he wanted the hallway to listen. Security's waiting, someone murmured from the far end of the table. I recognized the voice legal. Junior. Careful. No one met my eyes. The CFO set his phone down face up. No notifications. That mattered. Give us a minute. The room thinned out without protest. When it was just the two of us, he pulled the laptop back toward himself and scrolled. Not fast, not slow. He stopped on a line I knew by heart. Still there, he said. The anchor held. I exhaled through my nose. It always would. He leaned his weight onto the table. They think you're a contractor. They need to, I answered. That's the agreement. I'd never been a normal hire. I was folded into a shell arrangement that lived inside the credit facility paperwork, tied to bank-side oversight that never showed up on an org chart. My job wasn't velocity or features. It was restraint. Anti-money laundering checks. Sarbanes-Oxley gates. A spine the lenders could trust when the company got ambitious. He watched me long enough to measure whether I'd flinch. I didn't. 6 months ago, he said, "You warned me this could happen." I nodded. Back then, the CEO's son had started hovering meetings he didn't belong in, questions that circled ownership, power testing the walls. I'd built for that moment. Executive-only deletion, intent flags that didn't care about titles. Only actions. A switch that didn't trip alarms right away. It wrote. It waited. The CFO straightened. The way people do when they're done pretending to be casual. My leave wasn't random. I figured. I said, "You don't disappear unless someone wants you quiet." He tapped the table once. Not nervous. Counting. The bank asked for proof, not fixes. Proof? The silence stretched until it felt like a dare. Why would a bank hide its most important engineer inside the company it funds? Footsteps returned to the hallway. Security cleared their throat. The CFO slid the laptop back to me, just far enough to signal permission without saying it. "Pack your things," he said, "and keep your phone on." The door opened wider. The pressure didn't lift. It shifted. They walked me out without ceremony. Not the CEO's son, not the CFO. Two people from security who kept their hands visible and their voices low, like volume could make this cleaner. Legal was waiting by the elevators. A woman I'd emailed twice in 3 years slid a folder toward me and didn't let go until my fingers closed around it. Effective immediately, she said, eyes already drifting past my shoulder. Security exposure pending review. Pending what? Exactly. She tapped the folder once. Your access exceeded scope. I almost laughed. Almost. My laptop went into a gray bag. No receipt. No goodbye. The guard asked for my badge and held it longer than necessary, as if weight could transfer guilt. The elevator arrived. No one stepped in with me. My phone buzzed before the doors closed. A message from a product lead I'd fixed things for at midnight more than once. Heard you're unstable. Sorry. Another followed. Shorter. We had to lock your commits. Unstable. Overreaching. That word traveled fast when it had permission. At my desk, temporary borrowed. Never officially mine. I unplugged the one cable they hadn't noticed. The repository opened. Legacy branch. Comments collapsed. I scrolled to the line and expanded it, leaving the cursor blinking where it belonged. If you can read this, you're already in violation. No flourish, no signature. Just truth. Waiting. The elevator chimed again behind me. Legal's voice carried from the hallway. Make sure it's documented. The guards shifted their weight. Someone cleared a throat. The pressure wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. What if the system doesn't crash, like because it's waiting? The phone buzzed again. Unknown number, no text, no voicemail. Just a missed call that sat there like a dare. I powered the phone off and handed it to security when they asked. The guard nodded, surprised at how easy that was. Outside, the badge reader rejected me with a flat tone. Inside, the platform kept running. No alerts, no outages, no sirens. Somewhere, the code adjusted, wrote, and stayed quiet. As the door sealed behind me, another message landed on my personal email short. Internal, not meant for me. All hands, platform stable, proceed as planned. The story they wanted had started. The system hadn't. By noon, the messages started coming in sideways. A screenshot from a group chat I wasn't in. Someone had circled a green dashboard and added a thumbs up. Another clip followed two engineers standing at a whiteboard, grinning, one of them tapping out a victory rhythm with a marker cap. The caption read, "Cleaned it up. The CEO's son didn't bother hiding it." He posted in all hands with the confidence of someone who thought he'd beaten gravity. Platform stable. Redundancies removed. Moving fast. I watched the same metrics from a different window. Not the one they knew existed. Transactions flowed. Latency stayed low. No alerts. No noise. The kind of calm people mistake for safety. A call slipped through on my personal line before it went quiet again. No voicemail. No follow-up. Just the kind of missed ring that tells you someone checked and decided to wait. Inside the system, nothing broke. It complied. The new team pushed changes and congratulated themselves for simplifying. They trimmed guardrails they didn't understand and labeled it elegance. One of them typed into a channel I still had eyes on. Brief and proud legacy constraints removed. The mirror caught every move, every altered permission, every executive override. Shadow mode didn't argue. It recorded. Copies streamed out to a partner endpoint that never replied and never needed to. The report header updated on its own, line by line. Clinical and unemotional original compliance architecture illegally altered by non-certified personnel. No sirens followed. No emails from the bank, no freeze. The absence of reaction settled in the room like permission. Why would a bank stay silent when something is very wrong? The CEO's son sent another message. This one directed, "Told you it was smoke." I set the phone down and didn't answer. Silence works both ways. Minutes later, an engineer hesitated in chat. A half-typed warning appeared, vanished, then reappeared shorter. Seeing a duplicate stream? Probably nothing. The feed kept running. The mirror kept writing. Somewhere upstream. A threshold ticked closer to a line that didn't move for confidence or applause. My screen refreshed. A new status replaced the old one, still green. Still quiet, but different. Observation window active? The platform smiled. The bank stayed quiet. The clock didn't. The first red alert didn't slow them down. It made them louder. A screenshot hit my inbox from someone who still had my personal email. Red banner across the top, integrity warning. The message beneath it was short and cocky. False positive. We're rolling back. In the internal channel, an engineer tried to thread a needle with caution. That flag isn't cosmetic. It's tied to transaction lineage. The CEO's son dropped into the chat without preamble. Then disable it. Another pause. Longer this time. We don't have authority to. Now you do. A new line appeared. Permissions updated. My stomach tightened. Not from fear, but from recognition. He wasn't fixing anything. He was erasing witnesses. The rollback went live. A second alert followed. Brighter. Uglier. Someone typed. Deleted. Typed again. This changes how revenue is reported. Relax, came the reply. Accounting will catch up. What if it doesn't? Silence. Then a private message leaked to me from the same source as before. He's editing the audit hooks. That was the moment the system stopped classifying this as incompetence. Another warning surfaced. This one buried. Routed to an executive-only queue. Concealment risk detected. The CEO's son responded the way he always did, by pushing harder. Manual override. Forced commit. He rewrote permissions so the alerts couldn't escalate past him. I watched the mirror confirm it. Line by line. Every change stamped with his credentials. Every stamp tightening the net. An engineer tried one last time. If we touch that ledger, it looks like manipulation. Looks like leadership. Came the answer. What's worse than destroying evidence, rewriting it? The platform recalculated. A new status replaced the old. Quiet and final entity classified as uncontrollable risk. Not an error. A conclusion. My phone vibrated once on the desk. Unknown number. No voicemail again. The silence was deliberate now. Inside the system. The fraud flags lit and stayed lit. Transaction paths forked. Reports duplicated and sealed themselves. Nothing crashed. Nothing warned them out loud. The CEO's son posted one more message to all hands. Resolved. Moving forward. The mirror kept copying. The bank kept listening. And somewhere between those two facts, the point of no return slipped behind them and locked. The freeze didn't announce itself. It arrived sideways. A message flashed in a finance thread I wasn't supposed to see anymore. Forwarded by someone who still believed in habits. Drawdown pending. Another followed. Tighter. Access restricted. The CEO's son barreled into the channel with momentum. Who touched the line? A pause. Then accounting. Careful. No one did. It won't release. He fired back fast. That's not how it works. Treasury tried next. We're seeing holds across counterparties. Yeah, then call them, he wrote. Clear it. Minutes dragged. No green checks. No reassurances. Someone typed. Erased. Typed again. They're not responding. He switched tactics. Escalate. I want answers. The silence that followed felt different from the others. Not confusion. Not fear. Something procedural. My phone buzzed once on the table. Unknown number. Again. I didn't pick up. In a smaller channel. An engineer risked it. This looks like a silent freeze. Those are for criminals. The CEO's son shot back. We're not criminals. Legal chimed in late. It's discretionary. By who, no answer. Why would a bank bypass the man in charge? The call came in 10 minutes later. And I knew it had landed before anyone said a word. The CEO's son stopped typing. Status flipped to away. In the board channel, a single line appeared from the CFO's assistant. He's on his way. Phones lit up across the floor, not ringing, buzzing. Short bursts, missed calls stacking. Someone whispered, "It's not PR." Another voice. Lower. "It's not us." The CEO's son finally returned. Tone clipped. "We're fine. This is temporary." Treasury pushed back. Firmer now. They asked for confirmation. From who? The answer didn't come in chat. A private message slid into my inbox from a number I recognized this time. No greeting, no explanation. Stay available. Down the hall. Raised voices leaked through a cracked door. They won't talk to me, he snapped. I'm authorized. The reply came muffled but steady. They asked for the CFO. Keys clacked. Chairs scraped. The platform kept running. Funds did not. My phone buzzed again. Same number. This time, a voicemail icon appeared and vanished. Replaced by a text. Do not move. The authority in the room shifted without permission. The freeze held. And somewhere between the unanswered calls and the sudden urgency, the company learned what it meant to be quieted by someone who didn't need to explain. He came back before anyone announced it. The room reacted, first chairs straightening, voices lowering. The CFO didn't sit. He set his phone on the table, screen up, and waited for the noise to die on its own. When it didn't, he lifted his eyes. Tell me exactly what you told her to do. No one rushed to answer. The CEO's son leaned forward, confidence cracking at the edges. We terminated a contractor. Standard cleanup. The CFO didn't look at him yet. He slid the phone closer to the center and unlocked it. A screen mirrored to the wall without ceremony. Lines of text filled the space tight. Clinical. Impossible to argue with. Read the header, he said. The CEO's son squinted. Executive initiated, keep going. Destruction of compliance records? He stopped. That's not. The CFO raised a finger. Not angry. Finished. A new pane opened. Credentials. Timestamp. His name. Clean and unmistakable. Attached to the action. I didn't know it would. The CFO finally turned to him. You authenticated it. Legal shifted in their seats. Someone whispered, that's intent. The CEO's son tried again. Louder. She built a trap. She stopped. The CFO's voice stayed even. You're not blaming my whistleblower. The word landed heavier than a gavel. My chest tightened, not with relief, but with the awareness that the line had been crossed in ink. Not emotion. What happens when the evidence has your name on it? No one answered. The CFO tapped the screen once more and a second log appeared. Then a third override stacked on top of overrides. Each signed, each time-stamped. You edited permissions after the alert. He said, you concealed. The CEO's son looked around for help and found none. We were stabilizing. You were escalating. He turned his phone face down. The bank asked for accountability, not explanations. Security appeared at the door without being called. The CFO nodded once. A decision made and delivered without spectacle. Step out, he said. Now. The CEO's son stood, pale, and walked past me without meeting my eyes. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled, too late. The CFO looked at me last. They'll want verification. Outside. The hallway buzzed with movement. Inside. The next call was already ringing. They didn't bring me back to the building. They sent a car and an address that wasn't on any of the company letterhead. Glass. Quiet. A table already set. 2 people on the far side stood when I entered, then sat when I didn't offer my hand. Thank you for coming. One of them began, sliding a tablet toward me. We need verification, not remediation. I'm not here to fix anything. I said, pushing the tablet back just enough to set the boundary. I'm here to confirm what already happened. A look passed between them. Approval. Thinly masked. The screen mirrored to the wall at my request. I tapped once. Logs stacked cleanly. Executive authentication. Manual deletion. Overrides layered after the first alert. Each action chained to the same credentials. Intent. The man on the left said quietly, yes. And after the warning escalation, I answered, concealment. The woman across from me leaned in. This triggers multiple thresholds. It does. I said, Sarbanes-Oxley for record destruction, anti-money laundering for altered transaction lineage. She nodded, already typing. And the system's current state operational? I said, not compliant. What does power look like when you don't need a job anymore? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Not aimed at them so much as the space between us. No one rushed to fill it. We're asking you to restore, the man said finally. I shook my head once. Restoration would contaminate the record. Verification preserves it. He exhaled. Slow. That locks the case. It should, I said. Another pause. Then the tablet returned. This time with a signature line. Not a contract. A statement. I read it. Line by line. And signed. My name appeared on the wall beneath the title they'd avoided until now. Original architect. When it was done, the woman closed her laptop. We'll proceed. Outside the room, a phone vibrated. Inside, no one moved to answer it. I gathered my bag and stood. Stay reachable, the man said. There will be pressure. I know, I replied. Already turning. The door closed behind me. The pressure didn't disappear. It followed, directed, focused, and finally pointed somewhere else. The board call didn't include me, but its gravity reached everywhere. My phone kept lighting up. Numbers I recognized and a few I didn't. When I answered, the tone was careful. Rehearsed. Credit will be reinstated. Someone said, choosing each word like it cost them. Conditionally. On what? I asked. A breath? Removal. They didn't say his name. They didn't need to. Another call followed. This one routed through an assistant who spoke fast. Like speed could soften the ask. The board wants continuity, stability. They're prepared to make it right. Define right. Silence. Then a figure that wasn't a figure at all. 3 times your prior rate. Full authority. Visibility. I pictured the room where my badge had stopped working. The folder sliding across the table. The word unstable traveling faster than facts. The offer waited, patient and confident, like it had never learned anything. Is survival worth returning to the place that erased you? The question wasn't for them. It sat in my chest and refused to move. A third call broke in. The CEO this time. No preamble. If he goes, he said. Voice tight. The company lives. And if he doesn't, a pause stretched long enough to reveal the answer, then it doesn't. I let that land. Somewhere behind him. Someone whispered numbers. Timelines. Consequences measured in hours. I won't come back. I said, not to stabilize, not to shield. He tried once more. Softer. You built it. I verified it. I corrected. There's a difference. When the call ended, another message arrived from the bank, short, formal. Conditions acknowledged. Inside the company, doors were closing, accesses revoked, titles adjusted. The son's name disappeared from channels he'd once dominated. The credit line flickered back. Cautious and conditional. Like a hand offered without trust. My phone buzzed again. A final attempt from legal. Almost kind. If you change your mind, I won't. I set the phone face down and stood. The next step was already forming. Pressure funneling toward a single point. The endgame wasn't finished. It was aligning. They didn't make it public at first. Titles disappeared quietly. Access went dark. Calendars emptied. The CEO's son was removed from operations and placed under investigation, escorted out through a side door he'd never noticed before. The CFO called once. No apology, no explanation. I'm protected. He said, so are you. That was the agreement. Yes. A pause. The company will survive. Barely. He didn't add. He didn't need to. A final meeting followed at the bank. No conference room theatrics. No raised voices. Just confirmations sliding across the table. Conditions met. Credit reinstated. Monitoring extended. I signed nothing beyond what I already had. When it was done, the folder closed with a soft click that felt permanent. The CEO reached me later that night. His voice sounded older. We'll stabilize, he said. We'll rebuild trust. I won't be part of that. I replied, you built the foundation. I verified it. I said again, someone else can decorate. Silence held long enough to feel like acceptance. When the call ended, my phone stayed quiet. I logged in one last time from a cold terminal, read only. The system recognized me without ceremony. Logs intact, flags resolved, the mirror sealed. I closed the session and shut the laptop. He tried to speak to me once more. Intercepted by legal before he could. The message arrived anyway. forwarded and unsent. A draft full of confidence that never learned how to read. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I left a single note in the record and walked away. You told me to delete my work. I did. You just forgot that my job was keeping you out of prison. Here's the lesson I took with me. If you let people cross your boundaries, they will. If you build systems that tell the truth, they will speak when you cannot. And when you finally choose yourself, do it cleanly and without negotiation. Thanks for staying with this story. If you've been in a room like that, I'd like to hear what you would have done. Share your thoughts below. And if you want more stories like this, stick around. I'll be here. These are all of Alara's mistakes. The room went quiet before I could even look up. The slide changed again. My name stayed at the top. Bullet points stacked underneath it. Neat and unforgiving. Red circles appeared, one after another, like targets being drawn in real time. No one asked what they were. No one asked me. He stood at the head of the table with both hands resting lightly on the podium. Voice steady, almost gentle. This isn't easy for me to present. A brief pause. Practiced. I trained Alara myself. A few heads turned toward me. Others didn't bother. I've spent years mentoring her, watching her grow. Another pause. That's exactly why this is so disappointing. The word disappointing landed harder than any accusation. The cursor moved. Another click. More red. These errors put the project at risk. He continued, tone careful, reasonable. Given the situation, I can't recommend her for the promotion. That was the first cut. And I think it's best she step away from the project while we stabilize things. That was the second. A chair creaked. Someone exhaled. Across the table, a senior director nodded once. Already moving on in his mind, the decision had found its footing without ever touching the ground. I kept my mouth shut, not because I was frozen, because I could feel how eager the room was for me to panic. My name is Alara Brooks. I am 42 years old. The thought came sharp and grounding as I stared at the screen. At work, I recognized. At choices I remembered making under his direction. This was the meeting where my promotion was supposed to be confirmed. The one he had told me to relax about. The one he said was already handled. He sighed softly, like someone carrying a burden no one else understood. If it helps the team move forward, I'm prepared to take over the deliverables until this is resolved. There it was. The solution. His solution. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My hand stayed flat on the table. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing them shake. No one spoke for me. No one even looked uncomfortable. In moments like this, when the verdict arrives before the questions. I should mention this story is a work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA, drawn from situations that feel uncomfortably familiar to anyone who has ever sat silent in a room like this. He finally looked at me then. Eyes soft, almost kind, as if waiting for understanding. Why would someone destroy you while insisting they were protecting you? I stayed silent as the meeting moved on, not because I was finished, but because I knew exactly what came next. No one followed me out of the room. The hallway felt narrower than it had an hour ago. People stood in small clusters near the windows, laptops open, voices low. Conversations didn't stop when I passed. They just bent. Words thinned out. Laughter cut off too cleanly. Hey, someone said behind me. Not my name, just the sound, like a test. I turned. It was Marcus from compliance. He glanced past my shoulder, then back at the floor. Rough meeting. I waited for the rest of the sentence. It never came. Yeah, I said, because silence seemed to make him nervous. He nodded quickly, relieved, and walked away before I could ask anything that might force him to choose a side. At the coffee station, 2 analysts stood close enough that their shoulders touched. One of them lowered his voice. Not quite enough. If this goes through, the restructuring bonuses are safe. The other laughed once, sharp and fast. They had to cut someone. I felt it then. Slow and heavy. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. My phone buzzed. A message from a group thread I hadn't muted yet. Someone had dropped a calendar invite for a team alignment check-in. The time had already changed. The organizer wasn't my manager. It was his deputy. My name wasn't on the list. I leaned against the counter and let the screen go dark. My name is Alara Brooks. I am 42 years old. I'd been in rooms like this for decades, long enough to know when people were scared and long enough to know when they were relieved it wasn't them. Look, a voice said quietly. I turned again. This time it was Lena from Risk. She didn't step closer. It's not personal. Everyone's just trying to survive. Survive what exactly? She didn't wait for me to respond. No one did. Desks filled back up. Keyboards started clicking again. The floor found its rhythm without me. If everyone benefits from your fall, who would ever tell you the truth? My phone buzzed a second time. An email preview flashed across the screen. Sender, human resources. Subject line, follow-up conversation. I didn't open it yet. I pushed off the counter, straightened my jacket, and walked toward my desk, already feeling the pressure shift from whispers to paperwork. I closed my door and didn't sit down. The email from Human Resources stayed unopened on my screen while I pulled up the archive, fingers steady, breath not. I filtered by project code, then by date, then by my name. There it was, a PDF. I recognized immediately. I remembered the call. I remembered him pacing while he talked, telling me not to overthink it, telling me this was just housekeeping. I remembered the relief of being trusted with something that mattered. I opened the file. My signature sat exactly where it should have been. Clean, ordinary, the kind of thing you stop noticing after years of doing it right. I clicked into the document properties, not because I expected anything, but because something in my gut refused to let it go. The title wasn't the same. It had been changed. The scope, too. The timestamp after my signature told the rest of the story. The edit came days later, long enough to look intentional, quiet enough to pass. My chest tightened. I scrolled. Numbers I had never approved were now attached to my name. Exposure figures, contingencies, language that didn't invite questions. Only blame. This wasn't sloppy. This was surgical. A knock landed hard on the door. 5 minutes. Came through the wood. Not a request, not a greeting. I didn't answer. I kept reading. A second file opened, then a third. Same pattern. Same hand. My approval anchoring changes I never saw. If this went public, it wouldn't matter what I said in a room. It would matter what the paper trail said. And the paper trail said I was responsible. What do you do when you realize you weren't wrong, you were selected? The knock came again. Sharper this time. Ilara. I closed the files without saving anything new, copied everything to a secure folder. My hand shook then, just once, when I opened the door. My manager stood there with the same careful expression he'd worn in the meeting. Concern practiced to the millimeter. We need to talk, he said, already stepping inside. I turned my monitor toward him instead. They didn't invite my manager to this one. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. 3 people sat at the table. No name cards. No small talk. The woman at the center folded her hands and waited until I stopped standing like I might bolt. We've reviewed the materials you shared, she said. Not a thank you. Not an apology. I nodded once. My pulse thudded in my ears. A man to her right leaned back, chair creaking. To be clear, we don't believe the fault starts with you. The words landed, light as paper. I didn't reach for them. I waited. Another voice picked up the thread. Your approvals were altered. That's obvious. Silence followed, long enough to feel intentional. And yet, the woman said, eyes steady. The exposure exists. The risk exists. And the market doesn't care about internal nuance. I felt my jaw tighten. So you fixed the documents. She didn't blink. We fixed the outcome. The man leaned forward now, elbows on the table. Shareholders need closure. Closure needs a name. The woman added. Tone level. Almost kind. I looked from one face to the next. They were calm, not cruel. Decided. The kind of calm that comes from knowing the cost won't be yours. So you know I didn't cause this, I said, and you're still willing to let it stick. A brief exchange of looks passed over the table. Agreement without words. What happens when the truth is bad for business? No one answered. The woman reached for a folder and slid it toward me instead. Inside was a timeline, a plan, steps already arranged. This protects the company, she said. It limits fallout. It allows us to move forward. Without me, I said. With minimal disruption? The man replied. I closed the folder and pushed it back. My hands were steady again, which surprised me. If I don't agree, the woman's expression softened by a fraction. Then this becomes much harder for everyone. I stood. No one tried to stop me. As I reached the door, she spoke again. Quieter. Think carefully. This is how systems survive. The door opened. I stepped into the hall with the pressure still on my back, knowing they had just shown me exactly how much I was worth to them. I didn't go back to my desk. I went to the smaller conference room on the west side, the one people used when they wanted privacy without making it official. He was already there. He didn't stand when I walked in. That told me everything I needed to know. You shouldn't have shown those files, he said, voice low, controlled, not angry, careful. That put me in a difficult position. I closed the door behind me. You altered signed documents. A flicker crossed his face. Gone just as fast. You're smarter than this. He leaned back, folding his arms. Do you know why I was nominated for the promotion before your review even ended? I didn't answer. Because the board needed certainty? He continued. And certainty comes from people who don't panic when things get complicated. I stepped closer to the table. You mean when things get illegal? A breath through his nose? Almost a laugh. You're emotional right now. There it was. The old script. Don't. I said, just don't. He studied me for a long second, then decided the truth was safer than the lie. One of the board members trusts me. He said, more than she trusts the rest of them. The word trust sat wrong. Too personal, too loaded, and the exposure you found, he went on. It's tied to an account no one wants audited. If that thread gets pulled, this doesn't stop with me. I felt the room tilt. So you needed a name. I needed containment. And you chose mine. He met my eyes then. No apology. Just calculation. If you push this, it won't just be your career. It'll be the company. The board. People with better lawyers than you. What kind of secret turns a betrayal into a business strategy? You taught me to document everything, I said quietly. To protect the firm? A small smile. Exactly. I straightened. You're not protecting the firm. You're protecting yourself. His smile faded. Be careful. Ilera. People don't thank the person who lights the match. I reached for the door. Then you should have made sure I didn't know where the gasoline was. I left him there, already feeling the pressure shift, already knowing he wouldn't wait for my next move. I didn't plan to confront him in front of anyone. It happened because he cornered me near the elevators. Voice low, smile fixed, as if we were still on the same side. You're spiraling, he murmured. This won't help you. I pulled the folder from my bag and slid it against his chest. You changed the scope after I signed. He glanced down, just long enough. Then he stepped back, louder now, drawing attention. I tried to protect you. Heads turned. A circle formed without anyone moving their feet. I warned you this would happen. He continued, voice cracking at exactly the right moment. I covered for you because you were my friend. The word friend hung there, sticky and false. I felt heat rush my face. You altered. He shook his head, slow and disappointed. She's under a lot of stress. Someone behind me sighed, not in sympathy, in annoyance. She's been fixated on this idea. He went on, hands open, helpless. I begged her to slow down. The folder felt suddenly light in my grip, like it weighed nothing at all. You told me to document everything. I did, he agreed quickly. And you misinterpreted it. Murmurs followed, not questions, judgments. What if defending yourself makes you look guilty? A woman from legal stepped forward. Ilara, let's take a breath. I'm fine, I said. Too fast. Security appeared from nowhere, shoulders blocking the light. One of them spoke softly, as if embarrassed. We need you to come with us, for what the word came out sharp. Just for now. Phones were already out. Not obvious. Casual. Someone tilted a screen. Someone else stepped aside to get a clear angle. I didn't resist. That would have been the headline they wanted. The doors opened. I walked between the guards. Past desks where people pretended not to see me, past faces that had laughed with me a week ago. Outside, the wind cut through my jacket. A guard handed me a small box with my badge inside. You can collect the rest later. The doors closed behind me. My phone buzzed before I reached the curb. An internal message preview flashed across the screen. Subject line, immediate action. Taken. I didn't open it. I stood there, box pressed to my side. Watching my reflection in the glass as the story finished rewriting itself without me, the envelope arrived the next morning. No logo on the front, no greeting inside, just language that left no room to misunderstand intent. Allegations, timelines, a deadline circled in bold, data sabotage, breach of confidentiality. Words heavy enough to bend everything they touched. My phone buzzed while I read. A recruiter I'd spoken to the week before. The message was short. We're going to pause for now. No explanation. No follow-up. The thread went dead the moment I typed back. I called another number, straight to voicemail. Then another, then silence. A message came through from legal. Not asking, informing. All external communication should be routed through counsel. The implication was clear. My voice was no longer mine to use. What if losing your job is the least of your problems? I went back to the office because they told me I could collect personal items under supervision. A guard waited near my desk, eyes fixed on a point above my shoulder. No one else looked up. I pulled the box from under the table and started filling it. Notebook, charger, a photo I didn't remember bringing in. The cardboard handle bit into my palm when I lifted it, sharp enough to draw a breath through my teeth. I didn't let go. Someone passed behind me. Slowed, kept walking. You should have stayed quiet, a voice said, barely audible, not meant for a response. I set the box down to swipe my badge for the last time. The light stayed red. The guard stepped in, did it for me, and handed the badge back like it was already a souvenir. Outside, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from my attorney. Subject line, immediate strategy discussion. I tightened my grip on the box, ignored the sting in my hand, and started walking. Whatever they thought they'd finished, they just forced me to decide how much I was willing to lose to stop it. She found me, not the other way around. We sat across from each other at a small table near the back, close enough that our knees almost touched. She slid her phone across without a word. The screen showed a folder name I recognized. I shouldn't be doing this, she said, already looking past me. But what they're saying about you isn't right. I didn't reach for the phone yet. What's missing? Her mouth tightened. Just a fraction. Nothing important. That was answer enough. I opened the files, screenshots, email chains, a transaction summary that stopped right before it mattered. Enough to make noise, not enough to survive questions. This would get torn apart. I said, "It's all I could get." She replied quickly. They're watching access logs. Not him, not the board. A blur wide enough to hide inside. I scrolled again, slower. Dates lined up too neatly. Redactions where there shouldn't be any. A pattern that pointed in my direction, then vanished. She leaned in. If you bring this to the client meeting, they won't be able to ignore you. I finally looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine this time. What if the person offering help is setting you up again? I'll take it, I said. Relief crossed her face too fast. Good. That's good. I copied the files, handed the phone back, and stood. She reached for my wrist, then stopped herself. Be careful, I will. Outside, I sent the folder to a secure drive and labeled it exactly what it was. Not evidence. Bait. My phone buzzed before I could lock it. A calendar alert popped up. Client presentation. Mandatory attendance. His name listed as lead. Mine added last. Like an afterthought, I smiled for the first time in days and started outlining something new. If they expected me to attack from the front, I'd give them a performance they couldn't interrupt. The screen lit up before anyone spoke. He stood off to the side, hands folded, the practiced calm of someone who believed the room still belonged to him. My name sat beneath his on the agenda. Smaller, second. I walked to the podium anyway. Before we discuss risk, I began, voice steady enough to surprise me. I want to show you what growth looks like when it's honest. No one objected. They rarely do when you sound prepared. Charts moved cleanly. Forecasts aligned. Heads nodded. Pens moved. The strategy landed the way it was supposed to. A future that made sense. A story that sold itself. Halfway through, I advanced the slide. Cash flows appeared beneath the projections. Thin lines branching where they shouldn't. The room leaned forward. I didn't slow down. Notice the timing. I continued, clicking again. Liabilities surfaced, tucked behind language that had once passed review. Another click. Accounts layered over accounts. Shells inside shells, all feeding the same quiet drain. A chair scraped. Someone cleared their throat. He took a step toward the console. Stopped. His hand hovered, then fell away. If he interrupted now, it would be obvious why. What you're seeing, I said, letting the numbers sit there, is how exposure hides when it's given time and permission. A voice cut in from the table. Sharp. Are these verified? I nodded once. Cross-referenced. Time-stamped. He shifted again. A muscle ticking in his jaw. This isn't the scope of the scope changed. I replied, advancing the slide. The dates appeared. The approvals. Not accusations. Records. What if the safest way to expose a crime is to pretend you're selling a dream? Silence stretched. Not confusion. Recognition. He reached for the microphone. The woman from the client side raised her hand first. Don't. The word landed heavy. I finished without raising my voice. No names. No blame. Just the path the money took and where it ended. When the last slide froze on the screen, no one clapped. No one moved. He stood very still. Trapped by the same restraint he'd once used on me, I stepped back from the podium and felt the room tilt away from him. The weight shifting at last. No one congratulated him when the meeting ended. People gathered their papers slowly, eyes fixed anywhere but the front of the room. The client lead stood and spoke first. Voice even. We'll need independent review before we continue. Then she turned to me. You'll coordinate. He tried to smile. It didn't hold. Later that afternoon, legal called. Not an apology, a confirmation. My name was cleared. Access restored. An offer followed. Framed as generosity. Same role, same floor. A path forward. They said. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When they finished, I said, I won't be coming back. Silence. Then a softer voice. Trying again? We can make this right. You can't. I said, you already showed me how it works. He didn't look at me as I packed the last of my things. No speech, no farewell. Just a door closing without ceremony. 2 weeks later, the client called directly. We want you, she said, not the firm. I opened my own shop with a borrowed conference room and a laptop that still had my fingerprints on it. The first contract came through on a Tuesday morning. By Friday, the old firm announced leadership changes, quiet ones. I kept my name. I kept my work. I kept my sleep. Here's the lesson I took with me: if a place needs you to be smaller to survive, it will never be safe to grow there. Protect your name before you protect your position. Boundaries are not a threat, they are a decision. If you stayed with me through this, thank you. I know these stories hit close to home for a lot of us. If you've lived something similar, I'd like to hear how you handled it. Share it below. And if you want more stories about finding your footing after work tries to take it from you, follow along. I'll be here. The screen went black in the middle of the demo, and before anyone could even breathe, the CEO's voice cut through the room like a blade. This is on you. Get out and don't come back. The projector fan kept whirring. Useless. Loud in the silence that followed. Chairs stopped moving. Someone near the back lowered their laptop halfway, then froze. I stood there with my hand still resting on the conference table, staring at my own reflection in the dead screen while every pair of eyes shifted toward me. Security was already at the door. That was the first thing that felt wrong. I told you this system was fragile. The CEO continued, not raising his voice, not looking at the client. You said it was ready. You were wrong. My laptop was lifted out of my bag before I could reach for it. An IT badge flashed. Someone asked for my access card. Another voice, clipped and efficient, told me my personal drive would be wiped immediately per protocol. Not company files. Personal. The Fortune 500 client cleared his throat. Hold on. Wasn't she the one who fixed the breach last year? The CEO didn't hesitate. That's irrelevant. She doesn't have the experience for this level. I felt heat rush up my neck, then drain just as fast. The contract binder on the table was closed with a soft, final sound. No signatures, no discussion. Just gone. As I was guided toward the door, the room blurred at the edges, not from panic, but from the speed of it all. My name is Maribel Knox. I am 42 years old. The thought landed hard, uninvited, as if my own mind was checking whether someone my age could really be erased this quickly. In the hallway, HR pressed a tablet into my hands. Liability language, responsibility clauses, a place to sign. I didn't touch it. This story is a work of fiction created by our writing team. Behind me, the door to the conference room closed. I could hear voices again. Already moving on. Already reassigning the damage. My badge was dropped into a plastic bin like something confiscated at an airport. I kept walking, because stopping would have meant admitting that this felt less like a firing and more like an extraction. And I couldn't stop thinking about one thing as the elevator doors slid shut. Why did they need me gone so fast? Like evidence. The tablet was still warm when HR slid it back across the table. Closer this time. As if distance alone had been the problem. This keeps your record clean, she said, tapping the signature line. It says you accept responsibility for the outage. Standard language, I scrolled. The words were careful. Total responsibility. No mitigating factors. No shared accountability. My name appeared 6 times. The CEO's appeared nowhere. I need access to the incident logs. I said. Her smile didn't move. Those are being reviewed. I checked the timestamps anyway. The outage was listed as starting 3 minutes earlier than I remembered. 3 minutes before I'd even touched the console. I scrolled again. The entry showing my warning email from last week, the one flagged urgent, was gone. I sent a risk notice. I said, it should be here. She folded her hands. If it was relevant, it would be. Outside the glass wall. People who used to sit beside me stared at their screens like they'd never seen my face before. One of them caught my eye, then stood up and walked away. Phone already to his ear. Sign it. HR said, lowering her voice. Or legal gets involved. I didn't look up. Legal already is. A pause. Then this agreement includes a non-disparagement clause, so I stay quiet. So you remain employable. I opened my email on my phone. The message I'd sent at 2:13 in the morning, the subject line marked critical, now returned an error when I tried to forward it. Not archived, not deleted, gone. If this was truly my fault, why was the evidence erased so carefully? HR pushed the tablet again. There's also language about future disclosures. Blacklisting, I said. She didn't deny it. She just stood, collecting her pen. Already done with me. You have until end of day. The door opened behind her. Security glanced in. Waiting. I slid the tablet back without signing and stood up. As I passed the row of desks, someone whispered my name, then stopped when another chair scraped back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An internal alert I hadn't seen before: account access suspended. Effective immediately. The account still accepted my credentials on the first try. That surprised me more than it should have. The alias wasn't tied to my name, my company email, or anything HR could freeze with a click. Just a string of keys and habits I'd trained into my hands over years of late nights and quiet victories no one ever saw. The dashboard loaded, familiar, clean, alive. A private message blinked in the corner. Payment confirmed. Vulnerability accepted. Another bug bounty cleared. Not a salary. Never had been. That was why the firing hadn't triggered panic, only anger. I'd learned a long time ago that power doesn't always show up on payroll. I pulled up the old repository, the one I'd written before the system had a name people recognized, before committees, before executives started optimizing things they didn't understand. The first few files were exactly as I'd left them. Then I hit a section I didn't recognize. Someone had been there. The logic was elegant, efficient, clean in a way that made my jaw tighten. They hadn't broken anything. They'd improved it, then they'd bent it. Just enough. A conditional redirect disguised as redundancy. A fail-safe that only failed under very specific circumstances. Clever. I muttered, and the word tasted wrong. I traced the comments. The timestamps were real. The signatures weren't. Whoever did this knew my habits, knew how I structured defenses, knew where I'd hide a door for emergencies and how to turn it into something else entirely. If a genius twisted my work into a weapon, who were they really targeting? Another message popped up. This one from a forum handle I hadn't seen in years. You watching the news, I typed back without thinking. Not yet. The reply came fast. You should be. I switched windows and pulled up the monitoring feed. Traffic spikes where there shouldn't be any. A pattern forming. Familiar. Deliberate. My phone buzzed again. This time with a notification I hadn't enabled. A new access request pinging against code that should have been dormant. Someone wasn't just revisiting my system. They were waking it up. The conference room was smaller than the last one I'd been escorted out of, and no one here pretended not to notice me. Consulting role. The man at the head of the table said, sliding a badge across. Short term. We move fast. I looked up, and recognition hit before I could stop it. The jawline. The deliberate stillness. The way his eyes measured instead of greeted. I'd seen that face across the stage once, smiling through clenched teeth while my former CEO took credit for a system I'd built. Rival wasn't strong enough. This was someone who kept score. You already know why I'm here, I said. A corner of his mouth lifted. You wouldn't be sitting there if I didn't. The screens came alive. Diagrams bloomed across them, layered and precise. My pulse ticked faster with each node. I leaned in, then froze. That routing pattern. I said, who designed it? Does it look familiar? Someone asked from the far end. Too casual. It shouldn't exist anymore. The CEO's fingers drummed once on the table. We like resilient systems. This isn't resilience. I said, it's a trigger. Silence. Not confusion. Calculation. I traced the architecture with my eyes. The redundancies, the graceful failure paths. The door I'd built years ago to keep things alive in a worst-case scenario now wired to wake under pressure. Not protect against it. You're positioning this to activate, I said, on purpose. The CEO leaned back. You design something well enough, someone will eventually use it. For what? The question came out sharper than I meant. He didn't answer. He just watched me, waiting. Was I hired for my expertise or placed between two predators on purpose? A notification flashed on the screen behind him. External traffic climbing. Not enough to panic, enough to notice. Looks like your old friends are busy, he said. Can you handle it? I didn't respond. I was already pulling the code apart in my head, mapping how little pressure it would take to push it past the point of safety. The system wasn't breaking. It was being invited to fail. The alert hit 3 screens at once. No warning, no courtesy ping. Just a sharp spike that flattened the room's low hum. Someone swore under their breath. Another chair scraped back. That's not noise. A voice said, that's targeted. I was already zooming in. The traffic wasn't random and it wasn't sloppy. It slid past the outer layers like it knew exactly how much pressure each one could take before bending. Not brute force, invitation. Media's calling. Someone else muttered, regulators too. A second alert stacked on the first, then a third. Client portals going dark. Internal systems stalling just long enough to trigger failovers that shouldn't have fired at all. They're walking it in. I said, step by step. The CEO leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I could feel the shift in the room. That pattern, he said. Is that yours? Yes. Silence. Not denial. Not surprise. Something colder. They're using it deliberately? I said. This isn't a breach. It's an execution. On another screen. A news ticker refreshed. My former company's name crawled across the bottom, followed by words like catastrophic and investigation. Client statements began appearing in a steady stream. each one more careful than the last. They're going to tear them apart. Someone said, they already are. I said, I pulled up the old logic path, tracing it backward. Every move the attacker made lined up with a decision I'd once built for emergencies only. Someone had studied it. Someone who knew where the door was and how to knock without leaving fingerprints. If I wasn't the only one who knew about the back door, who else was pulling the strings? A message popped up in the internal chat. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. I looked around the table. Faces stayed neutral. Too neutral. Another alert flash, this one flagged internal access, not external. A familiar signature pattern flickered, then vanished, like someone testing whether I was paying attention. The CEO straightened. Can you contain it? I didn't answer. My focus was locked on the access log, watching the system open itself from the inside. This wasn't chaos, it was a trap tightening. And I was standing right at the hinge. My phone rang with a number I hadn't saved, but my hand knew it before my eyes did. I'm glad you picked up. The voice said, smooth, careful. This is getting messy. I didn't answer. I set the phone on speaker and kept my eyes on the access log, watching entries appear and disappear like someone breathing behind me. You framed her. I said, you put it on Lena? A pause. Paper shifting? A breath taken on purpose? She was junior. It fit. It didn't fit. I said, it stuck. She accessed restricted systems. She followed my instructions. That's not how it looks in the filings. His tone softened, like he was offering a favor. They're preparing charges, real ones. My throat tightened. I pictured Lena's desk, the sticky notes, the way she always asked before touching anything important. The only person who'd warned me when meetings turned strange. The only one who hadn't looked away. I can make it stop, he said, but I need something from you. The screen on my phone lit up. Photos. Lena leaving the building. Lena in a hallway. Lena's badge captured mid-swipe. Then legal documents. Already stamped. Already moving. Signed the certification. He said, state there was no back door, that the failure was accidental. And you walk, and she walks. The access log spiked again. A new timestamp appeared, then vanished. He wasn't bluffing. He didn't need to. Would I sacrifice the truth to save the only person who ever stood by me? I'm running out of time. He said, so are you. The call ended without a goodbye. Another message arrived immediately. This one marked urgent. A court date, a countdown disguised as a calendar invite, across the room. The startup's CEO watched me from behind a glass wall. His expression unreadable. The system chimed again, louder this time, like it wanted an answer. I closed the access log and opened a new window. Fingers steady, already mapping a path that didn't ask permission from anyone. The offer arrived in pieces. First, a calendar invite marked confidential, then a document with tracked changes already accepted, then a short message that didn't bother pretending to be polite. Title restored, equity adjusted, silence expected. I opened the file. My old role, rewritten to look like a promotion, a vesting schedule that assumed I'd stay grateful, a clause that required my signature on a certification stating the back door never existed, another clause that barred me from discussing internal systems with anyone, anywhere, ever. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the former CEO. It was an attachment forwarded without comment. Screenshots, terminal logs, my own commands from years ago, clipped and reframed, unauthorized access. The caption read, a story that could be told convincingly enough to ruin me. The message beneath it was brief. Sign, and Lena goes home. Don't, and the filings stand. Across the table, the startup's CEO watched me read. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. He knew what leverage looked like. You can make this end, he said at last, for everyone. I closed the document and opened it again. Slower this time. The language was clean, professional, designed to sound like a win. Helping him would save Lena. Refusing would leave her alone in a system that had already decided who it needed to protect. What if the only way to stop him is to destroy yourself as well? Another notification slid across my screen. A draft press release. Already written. Waiting for a name to blame if I didn't cooperate. My name. Spelled correctly. I'll need access to the audit environment. I said, the startup CEO straightened. For what to verify the claim? He studied my face, searching for hesitation. He didn't find any. You'll have a window. Not a lot of time. Enough, I said. The former CEO's message came in as I stood up. Clock's running. I didn't reply. I opened a new workspace instead and began pulling threads he'd assumed were buried too deep to reach. The room was sealed before anyone spoke. Folders stacked neatly, laptops open. The seal on the door clicked. Soft but final. Across the table, my former CEO leaned back, hands folded, already relaxed. He expected a signature. He expected me to blink. Let's proceed, one of the auditors said. Eyes on me. We're ready for your certification. I connected my device to the display port. The screen mirrored my desktop, clean and empty except for a single terminal window. The CEO's mouth tightened, just slightly. This won't take long. He said, we all want to put this behind us. I typed. The first command executed quietly, access verified. A second command pulled a map of the system's core, layers unfolding in real time. A few heads leaned forward. That pathway, someone murmured. It shouldn't be active. It isn't. The CEO cut in. She's misreading. I pressed enter. The logic bomb didn't announce itself. It never did. 5 years ago, I'd written it to sleep until a very specific condition was met. The condition was greed. Expressed as certainty, the screen filled. Accounts bloomed across the display, branching outward, each labeled with a jurisdiction that didn't match any balance sheet I'd ever seen internally. Transfers cascaded down the screen, time-stamped, cross-referenced, undeniable. A second panel opened, then a third. Internal log surfaced next, rewritten and re-signed again and again, each revision more careful than the last. A chair scraped back. Someone swore. The CEO stood. This is highly inappropriate. So was framing an engineer. I said, my voice steady. So was laundering through a system you told everyone was clean. I brought up the final window. My own access history, every line, every violation, no edits, no excuses. I'm not asking for immunity. I said, I'm asking you to look. The room had gone very still. Pens stopped moving. No one reached for their phone. Did I just lose everything? Or did I finally take control? The lead auditor closed his laptop and met my eyes. We'll need you to stay. I nodded and shut the terminal down myself. Across the table, the CEO's confidence collapsed into something smaller. Frantic. Security moved closer. Not to me this time. The door unlocked, and nothing about my life was going to fit back the way it had before. They took him out through a side door. No speeches, no shouting, just cuffs. A jacket draped too carefully over one arm, and the sound of someone breathing faster than they meant to. When he passed my chair, he didn't look at me. He stared at the floor like it might open if he asked it to. Miss Knox, an agent said, lowering his voice. We'll need your cooperation. I know, I said, already standing. The startup's CEO sat across the room with his hands flat on the table, palms down, like that could anchor him. We didn't authorize this. He said to no one in particular. We didn't know. A pen paused mid-note. You benefited. The auditor replied. That's what we're here to determine. My phone buzzed once. Then again. Messages stacked without opening contracts paused. Meetings canceled. Invitations withdrawn. A familiar pattern. Different room. Another agent leaned in. Your colleague Lena has been cleared. I closed my eyes for half a second. Air moved again. Someone coughed. They slid a document toward me. Charges listed cleanly. Cooperation terms beneath. No threats. No favors. Just consequences written in careful lines. Sign here, the agent said. We'll schedule the rest. I signed later. In the hallway. A former client stopped me. He didn't offer his hand. You could have stayed quiet, he said. You didn't have to burn everything. What do you build after burning every bridge on purpose? I built what I could live with. I said and kept walking. By evening, my calendar was empty. My inbox quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. Then a new message arrived from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line blank. We should talk. Not everyone wants you gone. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I opened my laptop and started a new file. Cursor blinking. Waiting for whatever came next, I didn't ask permission. The repository went live before dawn. Public, readable, forkable. Every safeguard documented. Every failure mode explained in plain language. No owner, no lock. No quiet corner where someone could twist it back into a weapon. A message popped up almost immediately. You're sure about this? Yes. Another followed. Sharper. This kills our leverage. Good. I watched the activity counter climb. Not vanity, verification. The work was out of my hands now, where it belonged. When the call came from legal, I let it ring. When a former partner texted a single word reckless, I muted the thread. Later, by the water, the day started without waiting for me. A runner passed, earbuds in, not looking back. My phone vibrated once more. A short note from Lena. They dropped it. I'm free. I replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. We both knew that was enough. The last message I answered came from someone who used to outrank me. You could have rebuilt quietly. I rebuilt openly. Silence followed. The kind that means the conversation is over. I closed the laptop and stood there until the noise inside me settled. They had tried to erase me by controlling the story. I erased the system that made that possible. Here's the lesson I earned the hard way. If a system only works when you stay quiet, it isn't worth saving. Protect your name, draw the line. When the cost of silence becomes your self-respect, pay the other price. Thanks for staying with me through this. If this story hit close to home, I'd like to hear what you think. Leave a comment and share your take. And if you want more stories like this, follow along. I'll be here.